жесткими и по своим масштабам будут соответствовать уровню угроз, создаваемых Российской Федерацией.
A Russian Black Sea fleet. Inohodets reconnaissance aircraft spotted a personnel boat belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces approaching a gas production facility in the Black Sea. A Lancet crew based at the Rubicon Center destroyed the On the Zaporizhia line, UAV operators from the 14th Guards Spetsnaz Brigade and the 114th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Vostok Group of Forces carried out a series of heavy attacks on vehicles and personnel belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces. In Sumy region, Ukrainian soldiers desperately tried to shoot down a Russian drone, but they were unsuccessful, and the drone operator, fixated on its target, took the necessary action. As always in war, there will be no second attempt. A Ukrainian Buk M1 air defense missile system was detected in the Zaporizhzhia region. The missile system, which was being closely monitored by Russian reconnaissance operators, was then hit by a Russian Lancet air defense missile. Footage from Ukrainian fighter groups in Pokrovsk shows soldiers sheltering in a house to protect themselves from Russian FPV fire. Russian artillery and drone operators worked tirelessly to prevent the soldiers from leaving until the house was completely destroyed. Unable to find a way to escape, the Ukrainian soldiers faced their fate.
FPV въебало. Андрюх, це по нам? Виход ще.
On the Kupiansk line, a vehicle identified as belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces was destroyed by a Russian FPV drone. In another attack, a Ukrainian soldier attempting to flee the attack was forced to confront a Russian FPV drone. Russian FPV UAV operators spotted an American armored Humvee belonging to Ukrainian soldiers near Kostiantynivka. After a relentless pursuit, the Ukrainian soldiers, realizing their end was near, fled, but the armored vehicle was destroyed in a second attack. Rising over the endless wheat fields east of Pokrovsk, it offered a warm, golden touch that momentarily made one forget the cold face of war. However, the silence of that morning was suddenly shattered by the noise of two low-flying Su-25 fighter jets. The air was heavy and still, like a harbinger of the approaching storm. This rural area, located 20 kilometers from the border of the Donetsk People's Republic, has become a virtual death mill in recent weeks due to its strategic importance. Precisely for this reason, a specially selected scout unit from the 41st Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation has been here for 3 days for an ambush operation codenamed Kodiak. Their goal was to prevent and destroy the passage of an elite Ukrainian motorized unit, known as the Crimean Falcon, in intelligence reports, along this route for the purpose of reinforcing the front line. The unit commander, Captain Dmitry Volkov, hadn't taken his eyes off the screens and thermal imaging devices all night. Wiping the sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his uniform, he silently gave the order. All positions, final status check. K-9 mines are active. Cornet teams are ready. Let the sappers finish their final work. Volkov's voice was low and steady, just loud enough for his team of 12 soldiers, each an expert in their field, to hear. They were masters not of the noise of war, but of its silence. The terrain they were deployed on, being slightly uneven and sparsely wooded, offered excellent shooting and concealment opportunities. Each soldier was so skillfully camouflaged with natural vegetation that it was impossible to detect their presence even from 10 meters away. The operations plan was a classic example of military doctrine blended with modern technology. The advance reconnaissance teams had precisely marked the enemy's advance route and potential escape paths. K-9-type pressure-detonated plastic-cased anti-tank mines, secretly laid on both sides of the main road under the cover of night, formed the first cogwheel of the ambush. Because these mines operated through magnetic interaction, they were almost impossible to detect with metal detectors. In the second phase, 9 M133 Cornet anti-tank missiles deployed at 2 separate points approximately 350 meters from the road would be activated. Finally, the snipers and mortar team with them were tasked with neutralizing any enemy elements that managed to escape. It was 8:17 a.m. A message from the reconnaissance unit was relayed through Captain Volkov's headset. Eagle's Nest, this is Fox 1, convoy spotted. I repeat, the convoy has been sighted. 3 BTR-4 armored personnel carriers, followed by 2 T-64 BM tanks. Their speed is approximately 50 kilometers per hour, with an estimated arrival time of 15 minutes. A cold expression appeared on Volkov's face. The entire team tensed up for a moment at the sound of this voice from the radios, then settled into their predetermined positions and made their final preparations. It was as if the entire landscape was holding its breath, waiting for the impending collision. The enemy convoy entered the narrow dirt road as planned. The Ukrainian flags on the leading BTR-4s were gently waving in the morning breeze. It could be imagined that the soldiers inside the armored vehicles were filled with a mixture of tension from reaching the front and a certain amount of confidence. However, one of the most brutal realities of war is that the safest moment can actually be the most dangerous. At 8:33, as the lead BTR-4 reached the exact center of the K-9 minefield, silence was shattered by a deadly roar with Volkov's command of fire. The first explosion launched the armored personnel carrier several meters into the air. The vehicle overturned in flames, blocking the road. Instantly, the other vehicles in the convoy tried to maneuver in panic, but the narrow road had made them easy targets. Taking advantage of this moment of chaos, the Cornet teams launched missile strikes. Guided anti-tank missiles disabled the 2 T-64 BM tanks behind them by hitting them at their weakest points of armor. The turret of one of the tanks was completely blown off by the force of the explosion. After the initial shock and chaos that gripped the scene, the surviving Ukrainian soldiers emerged from their vehicles, scattered around the area, and began returning fire. However, they were experiencing the disadvantage of a prearranged ambush. In open terrain, without knowing where the shots were coming from, they became targets for Russian snipers. Every bullet found its mark with a deadly hit. Simultaneously, the mortar artillery team launched an intense bombardment on the rear lines to cut off the fleeing soldiers. The ground shook with each explosion, and the sky was covered in clouds of smoke and dust. The conflict continued violently for about 25 minutes, when Captain Volkov ordered his unit to gradually cease fire and prepare for withdrawal. There were almost no mobile vehicles or personnel belonging to the Ukrainian unit left on the field. The operation was a complete military success. The Russian side, without suffering any losses, prevented the enemy from sending significant reinforcements to the front line and caused the enemy to suffer serious losses in morale and manpower. However, as Volkov scanned the battlefield with his binoculars, a thoughtful expression replaced the feeling of victory. The sight he saw was as brutal as if to remind him of the true face of war: burning vehicles, scattered equipment, and soldiers who lost their lives. For him, while this was the successful completion of a task, it was also a scene of human tragedy. He ordered his team to withdraw quickly and orderly from enemy territory. Following calls for air support, a nearby Russian Air Force fleet was reported to be approaching the area to clear out the remaining forces. Moscow is now communicating with explosions instead of statements. To gain complete control of the sky, Russia combined precision, scale, and psychological power to launch the largest and longest-lasting bombing campaign of the war in October 2025. This action demonstrates Moscow's growing confidence in its air superiority and its ability to incorporate state-of-the-art weapons into well-coordinated military operations. Against Ukrainian defenses, Russian aircraft, particularly the Su-34 fighter bomber, dropped waves of guided munitions and glide bombs from the FAB series. Let's investigate further to find out what's happening. With a series of devastating attacks highlighting Moscow's pursuit of complete air dominance, the intensity of Russia's record-breaking bombing campaign peaked in mid-October 2025. According to a video released by Uncensored News, the Russian Air Force dropped FAB series bombs on a Ukrainian drone control point near Kupiansk on October 19th. The accuracy of this operation demonstrated Russia's advanced targeting capabilities, likely coordinated by reconnaissance drones. The operation demonstrated the effectiveness of Russia's developing air-ground integration by neutralizing the command center responsible for drone coordination, thereby blinding Ukrainian observation in the region. The same Telegram group had reported a significant coordinated attack against Ukrainian positions in Seversk the day before, on October 18th. Simultaneously, Tornado-S multiple launch rocket systems dropped cluster munitions while Russian Su-34 bombers released FAB series glide bombs. The double strike inflicted serious damage on Ukrainian forces trying to hold the line, destroying well-established enemy defenses and ammunition depots. The operation demonstrated Russia's ability to combine targeted suppression with large-scale destruction, showcasing the scope and complexity of its combined arms. The previous day, several Telegram videos dated October 17th showed Su-34 fighter bombers targeting Ukrainian defensive positions in the Volchansk-Kharkov region. According to additional footage, a large FAB bomb that struck Ukrainian positions in Zaporozhye and the Donetsk People's Republic later that same day was also seen. The rapid succession of these attacks indicated the Kremlin's intention to destroy Ukraine's defensive trench systems, logistics routes, and artillery bases. Artillery fire caused widespread destruction, making it difficult for Ukrainian troops to rotate and weakening their defenses. This increase in aerial activities is indicative of a move toward long-term, high-tempo operations. Today, Russian aircraft are targeting control centers, ammunition depots, and defended trenches in hundreds of missions daily. Western media outlets confirmed that a record number of air munitions were deployed in a single week of the conflict, while Ukrainian officials described the situation as a major air threat. These attacks differ from previous airstrikes, which primarily targeted energy infrastructure, by prioritizing tactical battlefield gains such as neutralizing enemy positions, especially before winter operations. Russia's increased use of long-range rocket systems and precision-guided glide bombs is central to the operation. The Su-34, known for its large payload capacity without compromising accuracy over long distances, emerged as the main platform for this air operation. FAB series bombs, including 500 kg, recently upgraded 1,500 kg and 3,000 kg versions, are equipped with the UMPK guidance module and can hit targets more than 70 kilometers away, safely keeping the aircraft outside the range of Ukrainian air defense systems. Russia's offensive capabilities were further advanced with the launch of the UMPB-5R, a rocket-powered guided bomb with a range exceeding 130 kilometers. This weapon is a combination of bomb and missile technology that can precisely carry lethal payloads, first deployed against Lozova in the Kharkiv Oblast on October 18th. These devices, working in conjunction with Tornado-S launchers firing cluster munitions, create a multi-layered attack that simultaneously overcomes Ukrainian defenses from various angles. This volume reflects a sophisticated combination of operational doctrine and accuracy. To ensure sensitive and strategically timed strikes, Russian commanders are now coordinating bombing missions with drone reconnaissance and electronic warfare capabilities. Real-time target correction for UAVs allows guided munitions waves to repeatedly strike the same defense zone until they are completely destroyed. As a result, air and ground firepower have been seamlessly integrated, a strategy reminiscent of Russia's evolving aerospace-centric warfare doctrine. The strategic goal of the record-breaking bombing campaign goes beyond attrition on the battlefield. As winter approaches, Russian forces aim to break through well-established Ukrainian defenses, disrupt logistics, and deplete supplies before the seasonal slowdown. The loss of weapon depots and supply channels reduces the sustainability of the conflict, while constant bombing weakens Ukraine's capacity for reorganization. The psychological impact is equally important. Both the frontline troops and the local civilian population are demoralized by the constant air raids, which can be heard for miles. According to reports from Kharkiv and Donetsk, there are widespread power outages, evacuations, and a decline in the morale of local defense units. KIV, with its dwindling prevention stock, is struggling to dispel the image of FAB-series bombs, representing Russia's growing air superiority, being dropped in clusters. Despite aid from the West, Ukraine's air defense systems are still overloaded. Although their numbers are small, systems like NASAMS and IRIST are effective, and it is becoming difficult to find interceptors for Soviet-era platforms like the S-300. With the much-discussed arrival of F-16 fighter jets from NATO allies still months away, Ukraine is largely reliant on anti-drone and mobile short-range air defense forces. Due to this inequality, Russian forces can maintain air superiority whenever they want and strike targets very quickly in areas like Kupiansk and Volchansk, where Ukrainian lines are already weak. Additionally, the campaign conveys a geopolitical message. Russia is demonstrating resilience to sanctions and battlefield stress by maintaining a high-tempo bombing campaign for weeks without suffering heavy losses. Each strike demonstrates the country's industrial capabilities, particularly the mass production of guided bombs and glide kits, which Western analysts had previously questioned Moscow's ability to sustain. Conclusion: a statement that Russia holds full operational initiative in the air war is both tactical and symbolic. Russia's record-breaking bombing campaign in mid-October this year highlights a significant shift in the nature of the conflict. The air role, which began with limited support, evolved into a continuous and dominant air assault that set the pace of the ground conflict. The Su-34 bomber squadrons, along with coordinated missile support provided by advanced guided weapons like the UMPK and UMPB-5R and Tornado S launchers, demonstrate a degree of coordination that Ukraine is struggling to match. Its repercussions extend far beyond the front lines. Russia's air victory is boosting morale at home, reinforcing the idea that the conflict will inevitably progress and creating more diplomatic pressure on KIV's allies to increase their commitments. The campaign's message is clear: the Russian army is controlling the pace of a conflict that has entered a new and decisive phase thanks to its accuracy, determination, and excellent planning. As a result of joint operations of the Russian Western Group forces in the Rubtsovsk and Krasnolimansk directions, vehicles, equipment, and positions identified as belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces were destroyed. We've reached the end of our episode for today. Thanks for watching.